Now, the greatest radio shows of all time.
Suspense.
The Shadow Node.
Washington calling David Harding, Counter Spy.
Classic radio theater.
The Great Gildersleeve.
Fibber McGee and Molly.
Dragnet. Gunsmoke.
The Lone Ranger.
Now, step back into a time machine with your host, Wyatt Cox.
Good evening, friends of the Inner Sanctum.
Jean Hersholdt starring as Dr. Christian, an episode of the long-running show written mainly in 1945 by the people who listen to the show. The listeners write the show. You'll hear them address that here. Jean Hersholdt, October 17th, 1945, The Vaseline Program, The Attic Stairway Murder Mystery.
Dr. Christian's office.
The Vaseline Program, the only program in radio where the audience writes the script. Tonight the spotlight is on Spencer, Indiana, and the prize goes to Frida Franklin for her play, The Attic Stairway Murder Mystery, starring Jean Hersholdt as Dr. Christian and Rosemary DeCamp as Judy Price. To our prize play, The Attic Stairway Murder.
It's time to shut up shop, Judy. 5 o'clock in a dark winter's evening and all's well in River's End.
No, not so fast, Dr. Christian. All's not well in River's End. Doctor, a call just came in.
Oh, take it easy, Judy. After all, what's one more telephone call to a doctor's office?
But wait till you hear, Doctor. Mrs. Mary Parker's been murdered right in her own home here in River's End.
What? You mean Mrs. Parker, who lived at that big house on Oak Street?
That's right, Ed Parker's widow. You remember he owned a lot of real estate around town, used to be president of the bank?
Mrs. Parker murdered. A victim of robbery, I suppose. Well, it's no wonder. That huge Parker house is crammed full of valuable things.
Mrs. Brown, a next-door neighbor, found Mrs. Parker lying dead at the foot of her attic stairway less than an hour ago.
So that's how it is. Mrs. Parker, an unusually heavy woman and therefore slow of foot, falls down her attic stairs and the neighbor finds her, gets excited, and promptly reports an accidental fall as a deliberate murder. Who called me, Judy?
The sheriff, Doctor. The coroner's out of town, so the sheriff phoned to ask you to come instead.
Well, I suppose I'll have to drive across town and go through the required inspection. You coming along, Judy?
Oh, as if you needed to ask that. This town is going to feel a great loss in Mrs. Parker's death, Dr. Christian.
I'm not so sure of that, Judy. To me, Mrs. Parker seemed a cold, uncharitable sort of person. One who has incapable of keeping any real friends.
Mrs. Parker uncharitable, Doctor? Why, her name has headed every list of Red Cross donors and war bond purchasers and paralysis drives or what have you as long as I can remember.
Oh, I wasn't referring to the well-publicized charity of the purse, Judy, but to the unsung generosity of the human heart. I was thinking particularly of poor Mary Bignall.
Oh, I know who you mean. She's that thin, sharp-tongued creature who's taken care of Mrs. Parker's house for years.
Yes.
You can see her almost any time, day or night, slinking up the alleys on her way to and from work, twisting along on that old patched-up crutch.
Yeah, that's what I mean, Judy. Surely a really generous employer would have done something in all these years about that miserable crutch. Not to mention doing something about Mary Bignall's poor, twisted body.
But, Dr. Christian, no one except Mrs. Parker would have Mary Bignall around. She was so bitterly hostile towards everybody, so strange in her looks and actions.
Maybe so, but I can remember when Mary Bignall was a very pretty girl. She and Mrs. Parker were girlhood friends, you know.
Mary Bignall pretty?
Very pretty, Judy. Tall and slender, always laughing and gay with merry brown eyes. Well, she was called Mary B. to distinguish her from a friend who later married Ed Parker.
But I can't imagine her being pretty or a friend of Mrs. Parker.
Oh, the two girls were inseparable until Mary Ward married Ed Parker, quite suddenly.
But what happened to change Mary Bignall from a gay young girl into the unsocial person she is now?
I wish I knew. Oh, her hips was broken in an accident that left one leg shorter than the other, but some deeper hurt must have crushed her heart and soul about the same time. I never quite understood the case. Well, here we are. You found her lying just like this, Mrs. Brown?
Yes, Doctor. Poor Mrs. Parker was lying just as you see her now at the foot of these stairs, with letters and paper scattered up and down the steps and all over Mrs. Parker herself.
She must have been looking through a box of old letters. These are yellow and crumbly with age. And will you look at these old-fashioned valentines? Bumpy roses of red velvet, frilly lace all around the edge.
Yes, that's how I happened to find Mrs. Parker. She had planned a Valentine bridge party for tomorrow afternoon. She asked me to come over after Mary Bignall was through cleaning today and help with the decorations for the party.
Oh, so Mary Bignall was here with Mrs. Parker today,
Of course.
Well, what time did Mary leave for her own home, Mrs. Brown?
Well, it was later than usual because of the extra cleaning for the party.
You saw Mary when she left?
Yes, I did. Although I usually don't pay much attention to Mary's comings and goings. But late this afternoon, I happened to be out back, and I saw Mary leaning against our garage fiddling with that old crutch of hers.
Just what was Mary doing to her crutch?
Well, she was wrapping the part that fits under her arm with some old paper.
After that, you saw Mary go on towards home?
Yes. She straightened up and stared at me and then hobbled down the alley. Oh, I don't know what to become of Mary Bignall now. Well, she couldn't have existed all these years without Mrs. Parker's kindness in giving her work.
Well, that's a matter of opinion, Mrs. Brown. Did you see anyone else here after Mary Bignall left?
No one, Dr. Christian. But someone else had to be here. Well, look at Mrs. Parker's poor bruised face, and look at the blood-matted hair.
Oh, but Mrs. Brown, a woman as heavy as Mrs. Parker would necessarily be severely bruised to fall down a stairway as long and as steep as this one?
Yes, but look at her hands, Dr. Christian. Look at Mrs. Parker's hands. They're placed in exact order across her chest.
Mrs. Brown's right, Dr. Christian. Her hands are placed as dead hands are placed across the chest. And, of course, if she'd fallen, her hands would have been flung out to keep her balance.
And notice these letters. A dozen or more of them are arranged neatly on top of Mrs. Parker's hands.
Yeah, so they are. And the letters are in two neat piles.
Yeah.
Two very neat piles. Let's have a look at these letters.
Her rings. Mrs. Parker's rings. They're gone.
I see, Mrs. Brown. And the fingers are bruised where the rings have been painstakingly worked off over the heavy flesh of the fingers.
Yes.
Which means that someone took Mrs. Parker's rings after she had fallen down these steps, arranged her hands for that, and then placed these letters on top of her hands.
Maybe the murderer's still hiding up there in the attic, waiting to kill and rob us all. Oh, let me out of here. Let me out of here.
I dread this interview with Mary Bignall, Dr. Christian. We'll have to tell her that she's lost the only friend she's known for years.
You're right, Judy. This promises to be a very unpleasant night for everyone. Just look at that snow pounding down. The wind fairly rocks the car.
This is not a very nice neighborhood we're driving through. You sure Mary Bignall lives near here?
Yes, quite near. We turn down this next street. Mary Bignall's house sits on the very end of the street, right beside the railroad tracks. There we are.
Mary Bignall live in that? Why, it's nothing but a shed.
Yes, Judy.
Can't see any light from the window. She's surely not at home.
I'll leave the car lights on until we find out. Let's go and knock. Maybe Mary has gone to bed early to save lights.
Look, Dr. Christian, there's someone coming this way, just starting across the tracks. Looks like Mary Bignall. Can't be sure in this blinding snowstorm.
It is Mary. I would know that one-sided twisting walk of her if I only saw her shadow.
Dr. Christian, there's a train coming. Mary's square in the middle of those tracks.
You're right, Judy. Fast train is coming. Hurry, Mary, hurry.
She hears you, Doctor. She's trying to run, but with that crutch. Oh, Doctor, she's right in the headlight of the train. Only the engineer sees her.
Run, Mary, run.
Helpless. Mary!
From October 17th, 1945, Dr. Christian on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox.
You know, it's true. Difficult times have a way of focusing us. We have to think about what matters most when it comes to our spending, our health care. No doubt. This is why so many people are joining Medi-Share right now. Medi-Share is a trusted way to save up to 50% on your monthly health care costs. More than 400,000 people have already made the switch. It's pretty obvious why, too, especially now during this challenging season with healthcare costs and out-of-pocket expenses going up. Medi-Share can save you a lot of money. The typical family saves $500 a month. And Medi-Share is a Christian healthcare sharing ministry that's worked beautifully for 29 years. There are different options to choose from to fit your budget. I'll give you the number here in a second, and if you call, you can get a price within 2 minutes. Maybe now is the perfect time to make the switch and start saving. Here you go. Call 833-34-BIBLE. That's 833-34-BIBLE. 833-34-BIBLE.
In 1936, Jean Hersholdt starred in The Country Doctor, a movie about the Dion quintuplets. Hersholdt portrayed Dr. John Luke, a character based on Dr. Alan Roy Defoe, the Canadian obstetrician who delivered and cared for the quintuplets. 2 sequels followed, and Hersholdt wanted to do the role on radio, but he couldn't get the rights. So he created his own doctor character for radio, and since he was a Hans Christian Andersen fan, he borrowed that name for the character of his own philosophical Dr. Paul Christian, who practiced in the Midwest town of River's End with the assistance of Nurse Judy Price. The show began on CBS in November of 1937 on the Vaseline program. The program came to a conclusion in 1954. There was a television version of Dr. Christian in 1956, but Jean Hersholdt was not in good enough health to do the show, and another doctor portrayed Dr. Christian. His nephew, Dr. Mark Christian, portrayed by MacDonald Carey, better known as his role in Days of Our Lives. Now, more of Dr. Christian, October 17th, 1945.
Get my bag from the car, Judy, while I straighten Mary out in the cut.
Yes.
We'll make her as comfortable as possible for the short time she has left.
Of course, Doctor. Poor Mary. She's still holding tight to the broken-off top of her crutch.
I've been looking for you, Dr. Christian. I was just coming home from your office.
And I was waiting for you, Mary Bignall. I think you want to tell me about Mrs. Parker, don't you?
Yes, Doctor. I want to tell you about the time when Mary Ward Parker and I were girls together.
Yeah, in just a minute, Mary. There's Judy. We'll try to make you more comfortable. There now. That's better.
Yes.
So, Mary Bignall, 40 years ago, you and Mary Ward were intimate friends.
Yes, until I fell in love with Ed Parker and he with me. But Mary Ward objected because Ed claimed so much of my time.
But I don't understand why you want to see so much of Ed Parker, Mary B. After all, we have plenty of fun together without Ed along.
You'll understand it, Mary, when you fall in love. You can't imagine how wonderful it is.
I can't imagine anything wonderful about being in love with a poor boy like Ed Parker.
Oh, as if Ed being poor could make any difference with me. I guess you haven't heard the news. Ed's uncle, who's a director at the bank, has promised to start Ed out in the banking business any day now.
Well, well, Ed could do worse, I suppose.
Ed told me that just as soon as he's sure of the job, he had something very special to tell. Maybe that's Ed calling now.
I'll get it. Hello, Ed? Oh, I just knew it was you. Probably because I've been thinking about you all morning. No, sorry. Mary B. is out right now. Yes, I'll be glad to give her the message. Goodbye, Ed. Call me again soon.
Mary Ward, how could you? You knew Ed wanted to talk to me, not to you.
Oh, you're letting your imagination run away with you, Mary B. I didn't detect any special love note in Ed's voice. He simply said he was bringing his new horse and buggy around to show you this evening.
A new horse and buggy? Oh, that must mean he's sure of the bank job.
I just know Ed means this to be a very special night. I'll go press my new dress.
Oh, boy. Oh, now. Hurry up, Mary B. I want to take you for a ride. Show off my new horse.
Ed. Oh, Ed, he's beautiful. I can hardly wait to ride in your new rig.
And I can hardly wait to ask a certain beautiful girl a certain special something. Oh, there, boy. Come around on this side to climb in, honeybee.
All right.
I don't dare let go of these reins long enough to get out and help you. Hold there. Here, put your foot on this step.
Oh, hello, Ed.
Oh, hello, Mary. Careful, Mary B. Watch your wheels. This horse is frisky.
Oh, I don't know when I've seen a more handsome horse or a more handsome driver. How about letting me share the first ride?
Well, some other time, maybe. But tonight, Mary B. and I are
I'll
going...
go around on the other side and climb in.
Oh, boy. Easy now. Mary Ward, don't flip your skirts over the wheel like that. You're frightening the horse.
Hey!
Steady, boy. Steady. Mary B., get back quickly. You're right between the wheels. I can't hold him.
In the hospital for many weeks, Dr. Christian. Lonely because I heard or saw nothing at all from Ed Parker. Mary Ward was the only visitor I had. I tried to reach Ed through her. I gave her letters to mail and asked her to telephone him for me. But I heard nothing until one day. Well, Mary B., here's a letter for you at last. It looks as if it might be a Valentine. Oh, give it to me quickly. It's from Ed. He sent me a Valentine. Oh, what's the matter with you, Mary B.? Here, let me read your letter. A comic Valentine. Dear Mary, don't you think this whole affair is getting rather tiresome? Why not stop this silly phoning and letter writing and let me remain merely your casual friend, Ed Parker? I can't believe that Ed wrote that. But of course he did write it. You recognize the handwriting at once. Well, that should teach you a lesson you'll not forget soon. Ed Parker plainly doesn't want to be bothered. I'll never bother him again. I kept that promise, Dr. Christian. I never again tried to communicate with Ed Parker. Then that same summer, he and Mary Ward were married.
But you have surely seen Ed Parker through all these years before he died?
Only at a distance, Doctor. When people would no longer hire me for office work, I was forced to accept Mary Parker's offer of housework. But I made it a point to come and go when Ed was at the bank. One day, they brought Ed home from the bank, very ill.
Yes, I remember. He had fallen while at work and was unable to move or speak until his death the next day.
Yes. I was cleaning the reception hall when they brought Ed home. His eyes watched me until they carried him upstairs. He looked as if he were trying desperately to tell me something.
And today, Mary Bignall, I think you found out what Ed Parker was trying to tell you.
Yes, Doctor. About noon, I went upstairs with Mrs. Parker to hunt out some old Valentines for the party. It was dark up in the attic. It's dark in here, Doctor.
Help me, Judy, quickly.
Yes, Doctor.
There. Better now, Mary?
Yes, better, Doctor. But I'll have to hurry. I pulled a box of old letters from a wall shelf in the attic. A large square envelope fell out. And as I picked it up, I saw the address. It had been sent to me.
From Ed Parker, wasn't it, Mary?
Yes. It was a beautiful Valentine with a tiny honeybee drawn by hand down in one corner. I pulled out the Valentine and read the words inside. Mary B., please, dearest girl, send me just one little note in answer to the millions I've written you. I find it hard to believe what Mary Ward tells me, that you say you'll never forgive me for being the cause of your accident. I'll be waiting for the word that will bring me running. I'll always be waiting. I looked up from the letter in my hand to see Mrs. Parker staring at me in the dim light of the attic. She was very furious.
Put those letters back. Stop snooping in things that don't belong to you, Mary Bignall.
But this does belong to me. Ed sent me this Valentine when I was in the hospital. He sent you the comic Valentine asking you to stop annoying him with phone calls and letters. You switched the Valentines. Didn't you, Mary Ward Parker?
Don't know what you're talking about, babbling about Valentines. Give me that box of letters this instant.
Ed Parker didn't want you, Mary. He didn't want you all those years.
Ed was weak, except in business. He didn't know what was good for him.
The conclusion of Dr. Christian, the Attic Stairway Murder Mystery from October 17, 1945, when Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox continues. But first... Now on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox, the conclusion of Dr. Christian, October 17, 1945, the Attic Stairway Murder Mystery.
I knew I could help Ed reach the top. You couldn't. I knew, too, that I could help you, Mary B., just as I've been doing all these years.
Just as you've been doing all these years. When every step was agony, every day an eternity of aching misery. Every day the humiliation of handling riches and going home to poverty and hunger. Just as you've been doing all these years.
Give those letters to me and get out of here. Get out! Ah!
I didn't touch her, Dr. Christian. I didn't. She grabbed the box of letters with such force that the box broke in her hand, spilling the letters out. She staggered back to the edge of the open stairway, lost her balance, and fell all the way down.
And then it was you who arranged her hands across the chest with the letters on top?
Yes. At first I thought she was dead and placed her hands like that. But when I saw her watching me and knew she would be able to see and to think for a while, I put those letters before her eyes.
But they were your letters. Ed Parker had written them to Mary B. Bignall. I noticed their addresses this evening when I picked them up.
Yes. So that with Mary Ward's last conscious glance and thought, she would remember the bitter, empty years Ed and I had suffered.
But why didn't you take the letters addressed to you?
I couldn't carry them, Doctor. I took something so much better. Something Ed had meant for me to have. Until Mary Ward's lies tricked him into marriage with her. Doctor.
Yes, Mary.
My crutch, Doctor. My crutch.
Oh, Doctor. She's dead.
Yes.
What did she mean about a crutch? There's only a piece of it left. Just the very top.
Wait. I'll unwrap some of these rags and paper from the saddle of the piece of crutch.
That paper in your hands, it looks like a valentine, Doctor. It is. It's soaking wet, but you can still see the red velvet roses. And it's wrapped around some rings, Dr. Christian. Oh, they must be Mrs. Parker's missing rings. Now everybody in River's End will always think that Mary Bignall really did murder Mrs. Parker.
No, Judy. They'll be buried with Mary Bignall. And to the town of River's End, the wealthy and respected Mrs. Parker's death will always be the Attic Stairway Murder.
And the curtain descends on another Dr. Christian prize play with our star, Jean Hersholdt, waiting to greet you. And Judy Price right here to say...
And now here is Jean Hersholdt.
Thank you very much. I'm sure you'll be interested to know that Mrs. Freda Franklin, who authored tonight's prize play, is the mother of 8 children and the grandmother of 5. And still she finds time to write a radio play. This is her first radio play, by the way, although she has written some short stories. Next week we plan to present a new prize play called Playboy by Dorothy C. Shelton of Cherry Valley, Illinois. So we invite you all to hear the Vaseline program next Wednesday evening. And until then, I'll say good night.
Are your lips chapped? Try Vaseline Lip Ice. Healing starts almost instantly. Vaseline Lip Ice comes in 10 and 25-cent sizes at any drugstore. For quick relief, for quick healing, get Vaseline Lip Ice. Don't miss next week's Dr. Christian prize play called Playboy. Same time, same station. Bob Anderson speaking. This is CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting System.
October 17th, 1945, Dr. Christian on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Now on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox, we have part 3 of a 9-part Yours Truly Johnny Dollar story, The Phantom Chase Matter. This episode originally broadcast October 17th, 1956.
From Hollywood, it's time now for...
Johnny Dollar.
Freddy Quintana, Dollar.
Where you been, Quintana? You were supposed to contact me again later last night.
Yeah, look, this is a complicated deal. It takes time.
What's complicated about it? I'm looking for a guy named Tom Chase. You claim he's here in New Orleans under the name Tom James. For $500, you'll tell me where he's hiding.
Sure, but the problem is he is hiding too good right now.
I think you're stalling.
You saw that letter of his last night, didn't you?
Yeah, it's Chase's handwriting, all right.
I'll find him again by tonight. You know that bar we met in?
Ace's Castle.
Be there at 10 o'clock tonight, with the dough.
Okay, but you'd better produce, Quintana. I don't have much time.
If Chase finds out I'm trying to put the finger on him, neither will I.
Tonight and every weekday night, Bob Bailey in the transcribed adventures of the man with the action-packed expense account, America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. From Special Investigator Johnny Dollar, location New Orleans, to the Home Office, Universal Adjustment Bureau, Hartford, Connecticut. Assignment, The Phantom Chase Matter. Expense account continued. Item 8, 425. Long-distance call to Pat McCracken at Universal Adjustment Bureau in Hartford. Pat agreed that $500 was a small price to pay if it got us a man who'd embezzled $120,000 from a New York investment outfit. Item 9, 370, phone call to George Everson, senior partner of the investment outfit in New York. It was Everson who'd spotted a newspaper picture of a New Orleans bar with a man in the background who looked to him like Chase. Everson had been afraid he was sending me on a wild goose chase, and he was happy to hear his wild goose had just laid a golden egg. Item 10, $2, assorted newspapers and magazines to kill time. Yeah, there was nothing I could do until I met Freddy Quintana at Ace's Castle at 10 p.m. Pops Harker, the trumpet player at Ace's Castle, had told me Freddy was a bad one. But right now, he was my only lead. The day dragged on. Finally, it got dark, and I was just starting to think about dinner.
Hello, Johnny.
Lola Chase.
May I come in?
Well, yeah, sure. Come on in. Well, what are you doing here, Lola? I thought you were in New York.
George Everson told me about your phone call to him this morning, that you think Tom is here in New Orleans.
Well, yeah. Everson said he hadn't told you about the newspaper picture before because he didn't want to get your hopes up.
I know. He explained. I got a plane down here right away.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure that was a good idea, Lola. I doubt very much if there's anything you can do.
I thought if you do find Tom, if I could just talk to him. Maybe I could get him to see that the only thing for him to do is give himself up and return the money.
Oh, I wouldn't count on that.
Johnny, I had to come. He's still my husband.
Yeah.
George Everson didn't go into details about the newspaper picture.
Oh, there was an article on New Orleans jazz in one of the New York papers a few days back. It showed a bar scene, a place called Ace's Castle. And in the background, sitting at the bar with his face turned away, was a man George thought might be your husband. So I came down here.
Now you have proof he's here?
I think so.
What kind of proof? Johnny, please tell me.
Okay. But I'm not sure you want to see it, Lola.
Go ahead.
Well, last night on Ace's Castle, a character named Freddy Quintana contacted me. Told me he thought he had Tom pegged, that he was going under the name of Tom James.
James. That's his middle name.
Yeah. The kind of alias a lot of people use.
But that's not proof of anything.
Oh, I know. Then Quintana showed me a letter he'd stolen from Tom's room. An unfinished letter. I checked it against the sample of Tom's writing I'd brought with me. It looks pretty genuine.
What kind of letter?
To you, Lola.
Oh. Please, may I see it?
Here you are.
Lola, when you get this, I'll be far away. Don't try to find me. It's better that way. I don't know how to explain, but...
I'm sorry.
That's Tom's writing, Johnny.
Yeah.
What happens now?
Oh, I'm supposed to meet Freddy Quintana at Ace's Castle down on the quarter at 10 o'clock tonight.
I want to come with you.
Oh, Lola.
Please, Johnny.
Expense account item 11, $8.20. Dinner for Lola and me. She didn't say much during the meal. I guess there wasn't much for her to say. Afterward, we started walking through the quarter toward Ace's Castle.
It's interesting around here, Johnny.
Oh, yeah. The quarter hasn't changed much.
You've been here before?
A couple of years ago.
Funny.
What is?
You, in a job like this.
Why?
Well, I don't know. You just don't look like a person who spends most of his time looking for fugitives and criminals. It seems like such a strange job for you.
It's a job.
Do you like it?
Oh, I don't know. Sometimes I like it a lot. Sometimes I don't like it at all.
Like now?
Like now.
Thanks, Johnny.
For what?
For feeling that way.
Well, I guess it's my turn to say funny.
What about?
You're asking about... Well, Pops Harker seemed to think I was in the wrong job, too.
Who?
Pops Harker. An old fellow who plays trumpet at Ace's Castle. You'll hear him. He's blind.
Oh.
Yeah, that horn of his has to make up for a lot.
But why did he think you're in the wrong job?
Mostly because of the company I sometimes have to keep, like Freddy Quintana.
Oh. I hate to see things work out like this.
What's that mean?
I mean, finding Tom this way through a cheap information peddler like this Quintana. Oh, if he'd only turn himself in.
I'm afraid that's a pretty remote possibility.
I know. He seems to have forgotten what sort of a person he was. After his arrest, he wouldn't even talk to me about it. I guess he's forgotten a lot of other things, too.
All right, come on, Lola. That's Ace's Castle right ahead.
Do you think Tom will be there?
I doubt it. Probably just Quintana. But he's supposed to tell me where your husband is hiding. Here we are.
That must be Pops Harker over there in the band with the dark glasses.
Yeah, that's him. Come on, that corner table.
This is the place in the newspaper picture?
Yeah.
Yes. I can believe Tom's been here. He loved this kind of music.
Real nice, Pops.
Thank you, Mr. Dye. How you doing?
Oh, pretty good.
Johnny, I thought you said he was...
Yes, he recognized my voice.
You still messing around with that mean one, Daddy?
Freddy Quintana? Afraid I have to, Pops. I'm not enjoying it particularly.
Well, you stick to the good ones, Daddy. Don't mess with the bad ones.
Gossiping about me, Pops?
Oh, Quintana.
Oh, why don't you keep your face in that horn and out of other people's business?
Take it easy, Quintana.
That's all right, Mr. Dollar. I'll still be blowing away this here horn long after some folks quit breathing.
Yeah, sure. Who's the dame, Dollar?
Don't worry about it, Freddy. Let's just say she's with me.
Okay. Don't be so touchy. Okay to talk?
Go ahead.
It's all set. Oh, yeah, I got this chase on ice for you. He thinks I'm arranging passage for him on a boat out of here with no questions asked.
That's cruel.
Easy, Lola.
Business is business.
Where is he now?
Now, let's not get nosy, sweetie.
Cut the smart talk, Freddy.
My, you are in a pretty nasty mood tonight, Dollar.
Yeah, so just stick to business, huh?
Okay. Here. Now, here's the address of my rooming house. Chase gonna meet me in my room at midnight. You be there in a few minutes before. And Dollar, be sure you bring a dough.
You be sure you bring Chase.
He's in the bag. See you at midnight.
Oh, what a horrible person.
Yeah, he's sure not the best.
Johnny, let me go with you at midnight.
I don't think that'd be a very good idea, Lola.
Please.
Why?
Just say I'm pretty foolish, I guess. I just want to see him once more.
Look, why don't you...
I know it won't do any good, but after you take him, I probably won't see him again. He wouldn't see me before. He probably won't afterwards, but just to see him once more.
Lola, I don't know what good
I'd
it's
like
gonna...
to go back to my hotel and rest now, but please pick me up before you go to Quintana's room. Johnny?
Okay, Lola. 11:45. This is the address, Lola. Quintana's rooming house.
It's an awfully shabby place.
The perfect spot for Quintana. What time is it?
5 minutes to 12.
All right, let's go in. Number 8. Let's see.
Oh, here it is.
Okay, we won't knock.
There's nobody here, Johnny.
Well, we're a little early. Okay, we'll wait. So we waited. 15 minutes went by. Half an hour.
Do you think he was just playing some sort of fiendish joke on us, Johnny?
I've been stood up on deals like this before. But Lola wasn't used to it. Pretty soon the strain got a little too much for her.
Please, Johnny, I can't stand this anymore. Take me back to my hotel.
So I did. Now I was right back where I started from, with no leads. I decided to go back to Ace's castle. That's where the trail had started. I sat there for a few minutes nursing a drink. Then somebody slid into the chair across from me.
You Johnny Dollar?
Yeah, that's right. Who are you?
Lieutenant Lefebvre, New Orleans Police.
Ah. Well, what can I do for you, Lieutenant?
How long you been here, sir?
A few minutes.
Oh? Weren't you in here early?
Yeah.
What time you leave?
A little after 10. Why?
Where'd you go?
To see somebody who didn't show up. Look, Lieutenant, what's this all about?
You don't mind, just answer the questions, huh? Who was this, somebody you went to see?
A character named Quintana. I was supposed to meet him in his room.
Well, you won't see him back.
Well, that's a sort of a long story. Look, here's my card, Lieutenant.
Jones investigator, huh? You might come with me, Miss Dollar?
Oh, where to?
Out back. Was a woman with you earlier, huh?
Yes, Mrs. Lola Chase. I took her back to a hotel before I came back here again.
I see. End of the alley here.
What's this all about, Lieutenant?
Go ahead, Dollar. Take a look.
There were 2 policemen and a photographer in the alley, over near a doorway. I moved in close. A man was sprawled there, face up. Freddy Quintana. And he didn't look mean and nasty anymore. Just real tired. Real dead.
Now, here's our star to tell you about the next exciting episode of this story.
Somehow I managed to parlay a scrap of burnt paper into a plane ticket for what almost turns out to be a one-way trip. Join us, won't you? Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Johnny Dollar, starring Bob Bailey, is transcribed in Hollywood. Written by Robert Reif, it is produced and directed by Jack Johnstone. Be sure to join us tomorrow night, same time and station, for the next exciting episode of Yours Truly, Johnny Dollar. Roy Rowan speaking.
And the trouble starts heating up. From October 17th, 1956, yours truly, Johnny Dollar, here on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. We thank you for making us a part of your day. Would you thank this radio station, support their advertisers? It's their kindness and courtesy that allow us to be with you each and every time we roll around here on your favorite station. You'll find a great collection of yours truly, Johnny Dollar, through my friend Ted at RadioMemories.com. He provides radio programs on cassette, CD, or flash drive for your computer. That's at RadioMemories.com. And please, if you miss a day, you don't have to miss a single show. You can always find our shows at classicradio.stream. That is classicradio.stream, where you can stream our shows. You can learn more about classic radio collecting. You can find information on places where our podcasts are available via download, so you can always have our shows. You can also contact me. You can also find links to our social media. And if you'd like to help me expand the collection, you can buy me a coffee. The Buy Me a Coffee money all goes to expanding our classic radio collection, and I greatly appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in. Tell your friends great radio shows are right here at this spot on the dial. Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox on your favorite station.